Hello, Miss Kelly Cahan. Am I saying your name right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you for coming on the Beauty Pro podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, if people don't know who you are, please share who you are, who is Scissor Make Sense, and how did you come to be?
Yeah. So I'm Kelly from Scissors Make Sense. So I'm the face behind the page. And it came to be kind of naturally. I had won a contest in 2012 with Nick Arrojo, and I was lucky enough through that process to learn from him and the industry greatest. And from that, people started reaching out because they saw changes in me and my business.
Mm.
And they would ask me for advice or questions. So I turned that into a book, which then later went into coaching and how the page evolved. And so, really, I'm just here to serve other salon owners and pay forward what I was lucky enough to win from Arrojo and his mentors.
I love that. And you probably saw, but we did have Nick on as one of our first guests.
It's
So
amazing.
I didn't know that until, like, about you until I think just before I asked you on. And I was like, oh my God, she has to come on the show. I got the teacher and the student. Yes, absolutely. So, what made you decide to choose the beauty industry and then to work with Nick Rojo?
Yeah. Choosing the beauty industry, I always say it kind of chose me. I took a
Mhm.
path of theater in high school and thought that I would major in that in college. And what I learned is that college and high school were very different. I felt like I went from Legally Blonde theater to like the Misfits theater, and I just felt very out of place. And, as a young girl, I didn't know where I fit in, but I was introduced to costuming and makeup. And I come from a long line of artists in my family. We have musicians and artists. And so naturally, I knew I would do something pretty creative. And so I started off in makeup, believe it or not. And my aunt and uncle owned a hair salon. And I asked them if they would apprentice me because I just wanted professional credentials. And of course, through that process of apprenticing and gaining a few clients, it's like 5 clients turn into 10, turn into 20, turn into 40. And the next thing I knew, I was kind of a full blown hairstylist. I mean, that's the short, condensed version. I tried to leave it a couple times and it kept coming back and knocking on my door. But I had actually followed Nick Arrojo when he was on TV because having these conversations with people and consultations were really challenging for me. And he had a way on that show of talking to people into these big major changes in a way that really made them feel safe. He didn't talk to them in a judgmental way. So I was really
Mhm.
familiar with him. And after opening up my own salon and kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know what the next step is for the first time in my career, I saw that he was hosting a class. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go. I was excited it was him and to learn from him. And it was at that class that he mentioned the contest. And so I decided to enter it. And then a year later, I was being declared the winner, which was just mind blowing.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I love how life has these twists and turns, right? And you said that you were really big in theater. For me too, I was going into it. I was full blown. My professor is like, "No. Why do you want to act again? Why? No, no, go to school." And I was like, "What? So what are you talking about?" But yeah, life pivots us in such a weird, fantastic way. So, what's a struggle you're going through right now? Let's just
That's a
like get into it, right? Like
yeah.
what's bothering you?
Ooh, a struggle right now. I'm in a transitional period. So I wouldn't say that either one is struggling necessarily, but I've got my brick and mortar business, which is really, really successful. COVID really brought some fears about that I had never had before. And so as I transitioned into the coaching business, I really started thinking that as much as I love the salon and I'm going to, ride that as long as I can, I really started thinking about needing something that only relied on me, that didn't rely on a team, that didn't rely on other clients. Although I guess in the online world, that relies on clients too with coaching, but it was that it would still stand if I didn't have anyone else. And so, now I'm in this really in between where I've got one extremely successful business and now a new baby business that I'm trying to grow. And so it's splitting my time. It's how much time do I give? And then, I love my brick and mortar business. So I know that the coaching might grow if I had more time to put into it. And so it's really, I don't know if it's fully a struggle, but it's really learning how to balance the time and explore just how different the online space is from the brick and mortar space, because it is very different.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%. The things that work
Yeah.
with people do not work online because we have that invisible barrier kind of thing,
And I think there's this big myth out there. It's that, people are marketing right now that if you build it, they will come. It's just that simple. Build an online program and you'll be successful and you'll have this passive income. And, I'm almost 4 years into it. And I can tell you it is not that easy. So anyone who's selling it as being that easy, it gets to be easy, but it's just like any other business. And I'm learning that, having gone through the brick and mortar and knowing at what part my business really took off and felt like it started to get easy was years in. And I'm learning it's the same in my online space. So while it's just 3 or 4 years in, I can look back and see how far I've come, but I'm also really aware of how much further I need to go.
Yeah. So with that myth, with the online versus brick and mortar, we got that covered. So now what's a myth that you are constantly facing about what you do for a living every
Mhm.
day?
Yeah. Are you referring more to the salon or?
Yeah, just when you're talking to like anybody in a grocery line, like
Mhm.
what's the myth that they have about what you do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there are still some people out there, unless you're in the industry, of course, we're all standing up and saying, this is my worth and this is my value. But I think a myth in the industry is that hairstylists are not successful or that we don't make a very good living. And the reality is, we can make just as good a living, if not better, than some of our friends and relatives who went to college and have 9 to 5 jobs.
Mhm.
It's just all about understanding what it takes to run your business, pricing your services, and really respecting your boundaries.
Mhm. And as coaches, we know that we can't force anybody to level up, right? They have to be willing to do that for themselves. But when you were talking just now, I thought about those salon owners and hairdressers and barbers who are charging like pennies. How do you, Kelly, I guess, for lack of a better word, like convince them that they can charge more? They don't have to be in that space of like $10 for a haircut or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I talk a lot about you've got to build the herd. So I
Mm,
understand when you're first starting out why your prices may be lower, but even in my salon, we're not willing to go below $60. That is our
mm,
cheapest price point. And I can tell you the why behind that. We didn't just pick that number out of thin air. It was, we have a certain commission rate that we can pay. And then I look at a livable wage. And I'm not talking about minimum wage because honestly, it's not very livable. So I'm not willing to drop below what I would consider even a low livable wage. And for us, that's $60 at what we pay out in commissions. So I think that's number one. And then just really identifying that when you're first starting out, you want to grow the herd. So you want to get as many people as you can in and build that demand. But from there, once you have demand, you've established yourself as an expert and as an authority in what you do, it's the demand that determines how much you can pay. So I use this a
mm,
little analogy in my coaching where it's like, if I have a local fair and there's a vendor there and he's got, 1,000 plastic rings, and then I have a guy who's got 5 rare sapphires and there's 500 people coming, those plastic rings are likely to cost 50 cents because they're just a dime a dozen,
mm,
for lack of better words. However, if I have 500 people wanting to see these rare sapphires and there's only 5 of them for those 500 people, I can charge a lot more because I need to weed out as much of that as I possibly can so that only the select few who are willing to pay for them will and can. And our time are those rings. So, once you get to the point that you have more people than you do time, your time becomes very precious. And therefore, it doesn't matter where you are or where you're from or what the competitor is charging. If you've created that for yourself, then you can charge those higher prices. But that comes down to you've got to put the level of professionalism behind the service that you're trying to charge for, because that's what's going to create that demand.
Mm-hmm. So back to the two different businesses that you're trying to grow right now. You talked about a balancing act and boundaries. And through all of that, it can be very hectic, very stressful, but rewarding. How are you taking time to nourish yourself?
Mhm. Yeah, I delegate a lot. I just had this conversation. I mean, that's the key to it, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us as business owners get so caught up in the details that we, even as consumers, don't pay as much attention to.
Mm.
And so I think sometimes just letting go of those small details and knowing that, if someone can do it 80% as good as we think we can, the 20% are in those small details. But if they're doing it 80% as good, then we need to trust them with that and let go. And so for me, the key to balancing everything is in delegation and allowing other people to shine in those areas, knowing that it's not going to be exactly how I do it, but that it's good enough. And that allows me to have the freedom to really take care of myself in the mornings and after work and on the weekends, and things like that. And it's hard. It's hard when it's your baby.
Mm.
But I think in order to create that time for yourself, you have to be willing to delegate.
What do you like to do in your
Business.
nourish me moments?
Okay. In the mornings, I like to be able to just have like slow time with my coffee and like really set intentions for my day.
Mm.
I do a card pull, and it's really just to have a positive moment. And I like a hot bath every now and then. I think that's really awesome to just take that time. And then I schedule in my self-care. So I put it in
Okay.
my calendar like anything else. So I create that appointment with myself. I know that I'm the type of person, I'm not going to do my own nails. I'm not going to color my own hair. I would rather be on the couch at the end of the day watching trash TV. So I have to schedule these things for myself, just like any other appointment. And so, those are the things that I like to do to take care of myself, is just to prioritize, what those personal needs are. And sometimes, I meditate or I'll read a book or journal, especially if I'm feeling a lot of heavy emotions. Journaling really helps me to figure out why I'm feeling what I'm feeling so that I can figure out what I need to do to take care of that.
I am so happy that you just spoke on journaling. I literally will preach this to my coaching clients on the podcast, like to everywhere. And I know that as creatives, we hear journaling and it's just so like, oh, it takes too long. That's draining. That's boring. But to hear you, who has worked at the top and you have been with, top paying guests, yes, journaling is healing for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. It helps you to really tap into like what's going on, because sometimes we're too much in our heads and not in our bodies. And so I like to keep it simple, which is just starting off with, what am I feeling today? Why am I feeling this way? And what do I need to do? What 3 things can I do today to ease this? Do I need to have a difficult conversation with someone? Do I need to leave 15 minutes early and go get a hot tea because my throat is sore? Like whatever it is, but it just allows you to stop for a minute, be present, and really check in with yourself, because your needs matter just as much. And as business owners, we're often wives, moms, business, and we're taking care of a lot of people. And so the journaling is really just an exercise for you to take 2 seconds to take care of you and identify what those needs are. And then what can you do to take care of you?
Love it. So what has been your biggest failure and what did you learn?
Um, Goodness, so many failures. I think, it's hard to say failures because I just feel like you don't know what you don't know. And so a lot of them are more just lessons learned. But, looking at who I was when I first started, I always say, and I've said this before, but it's like, I just feel like I would have so many apologies that I would make along the way to the different people who have worked for me because I didn't know better. I was young and I was going off of borrowed information that I had. I hadn't yet studied under Nick. I hadn't been in my own masterminds and coaching groups. And, you know, sometimes it stinks because we do tend to lock people into whatever our last experience was with them. And so, you know, I think back and like those people, and like if I was in that situation, I would handle it this way now. And they only know that of me. And, you know, there are times as a leader, you wish that you could go back and say, hey, I'm not that person anymore. I know you probably still see me that way, or you still see me as horrible. Don't ever go work for her. But I want to let you know that I learned past that and that, you know, I didn't stay stuck. I continued to grow. So for me, I think that's the biggest piece is that when I look back, I think a lot about, you know, what I would go back and redo.
I hear that what so loud and clear. I think about that too. Like, wow, at that time in my life, yeah, I was toxic, sure. You know, everybody's that has that toxic owner. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
If you had, go ahead.
I was going to say, and you sometimes when you don't know better, you let the opinions of others creep in and they start telling you what you should be doing. And so that's why, you know, when I'm coaching, one of the biggest things we work on is like identifying who you are as a brand with your policies and your non-negotiables, because they're going to back you up in everything.
Yeah.
And when people do come in with their ideas and they're this, it's not that you can't hear them out. And some of them you can adopt if they're easy, but others you can kind of say, these are the policies. How do you think that lines up? And honestly, it will answer the question for you so that you can take the personal piece out of it and say, you know, if all of your teammates came in and asked me for that same thing, do you think that I could? And they'd probably say, no, you couldn't. And I'm like, I know. So I would love to do this for you individually, but I can't do it for the whole team. And therefore, if I can't do it for everyone, I can't do it for one. And that's the biggest piece is like really, really honing in on what are those policies? What are your non-negotiables? Because they're, and your branding, it's going to be the backbone to every decision that you make in your business. And I didn't have that in the beginning, but I certainly do now.
Lessons learned, and now you're teaching everybody else to do that. So it kind of makes up for it, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. Paying it forward.
Yeah. So with that, what has been an insult that you've ever gotten that now today you're like so proud that you got that insult?
I remember one time as I started waking up and starting like putting boundaries in place and policies and things. I had a client one time, you know, she's been with me forever and she's still with me, but she was, you know, we were talking about my growth and how much I had changed. And she said, if I had to say anything, I would say you've gotten to be a little bit selfish. And that was such a negative word to me. Like I didn't like hearing that. But as I really thought about it and really what I think she meant from it, I was like, you know what? Good for me, you know, like good for me for saying I'm not going to let people walk all over me. Good for me for enforcing. And if people don't like that, then they're not the right person for me. And funny enough, she stayed. She still comes. I think in a way it was a compliment. I don't think she meant it as an insult, but at the time, you know, it dug deep when she said it.
Yeah. It was a trigger word.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my
because we're
goodness.
in an industry where we give and give and give and give. We
Mhm.
really do. So for someone, when you're so giving to identify you as selfish, you know, that hits like a dagger. But at the same time, what made me selfish was that I was no longer willing to come in on a day off. I was no longer willing to come in or stay late or discount or do the things that I had done, you know, that we now teach people not to do. And so, you know, if that makes me selfish, then that makes me selfish.
Mhm. What's an area that in your area of expertise, what is something that no one agrees with you about? It could be personal, it could be professional, but you being you, what is that thing?
Oh, that is a good question. I have to really think about that. Um, I don't know if I have an answer to that. That is a really good one. It's hard to stump me. I'm not going to lie. What is something that people don't agree with me on? Um, I don't know. We might have to come back with that one so that I'm
Okay,
in silence.
we're gonna revisit that because that's
Okay.
that's that's a
That's a
good one.
good
Okay,
question. That's a good
thank you. Okay, so let me see. Let me see what I have in my arsenal over here. Um, what do you tell people starting out? because you had a competition, right? And you won it, and that kind of shot you up. But people, the majority of people don't get that, or they don't want to be in that position. So what do you tell them? Like, what's your favorite piece of advice for them?
I think it's be consistent. Don't give up on your dreams. Stay authentic to who you are. Really explore that. That took me a long time, especially working with Nick and Arrojo. I would go to New York. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and I would just, I never felt like I fit in. I wasn't cool enough. I wasn't edgy enough, and finally I just kind of was like, you're good enough as is. Like, why are you trying to fit in? So, there's many times I was on stages, I look back at those outfits and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Because I was trying to fit in, but it doesn't look like me. And I look out of place, and I learned like, I don't have to look like that. But consistency, I think with the authenticity is really important, because right about the time you've put that much energy and effort into something that you want to give up is where everybody's giving up. And if you just keep showing up every single day and remembering why you're doing it, that's so important. If you're doing it because you want to be famous or you want to make a bunch of money, explore a little deeper. And I like to do an exercise with my students about going at least 7 layers deep of saying, why is that important? Why is that important? And you'll find that whatever you think your original answer is gets a lot deeper, and for me, it was to create an environment that I myself wanted to work in. But when I kept going deeper, I realized I wanted to give my son a life that I didn't have growing up. And when you stick with that and you wake up every day with a true purpose, it will help you stay focused and stay consistent versus thinking about the likes and the views or the money that's coming in. It's remembering that you're serving with a purpose, and you do that every day consistently, and you will last longer than everyone else, and it'll start paying off.
Would you say that that is also your definition of success, or do you have a different definition?
Absolutely. I mean, my definition of success is really being able to live life on the terms that I want to live, that I'm doing what I want to be doing with my time. And that doesn't mean that I don't ever work, I mean, that has to
Right.
fit in there, but it does mean that I work in a way that feels in balance with everything else that I want to be doing with my friends and my loved ones, and that I'm not sacrificing either for the other.
Mm. What have you learned in the industry that you wish everybody that is not in the industry would grab a hold of?
Yeah. I think it's that everyone has a story, and, everyone carries their little inner child with them. And so it's so easy to get frustrated at people, and, you're driving home and there's traffic and there's this, and like, there's always a bigger story. And I think with us, we are so fortunate that every day we get to hear people's stories, and
Mhm.
everybody really is experiencing something, whether it's a loved one who's sick, whether it's a divorce, a horrific custody battle, like
Mm.
everybody's going through something. And I think that people outside of the industry who stay kind of stuck in their little bubble and only see the same people every day at work and the same family, they don't get to expand past that. But I think as hairstylists who have been in it for a very long time, it really softens our hearts as to what people go through. And I find a lot of times whatever I've been going through never even stacks up. So I might think it's
Mm.
just the most hard, horrific thing I've ever experienced. And then I hear someone else's story and it makes me realize I don't have it that bad,
Yeah.
Not that it takes from what I'm experiencing, but, there are people out there who have some really serious struggles.
Yeah. You realize how blessed you really are, and like, wow, what am I complaining for?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you realize, someone who sat at the light a little bit too long was maybe reading an article about a lost loved one, or,
Yeah.
you never know. So it's like, we're just so quick to hit the horn and flip the bird, but it's like,
Mhm.
you never know. I mean, I've had moments when I've had it happen to me and I'm like, God, I'm sorry. That's the
Yeah,
worst thing
yeah.
ever.
And then you start crying about crying, and it's just like a downward spiral.
Yes, yes, and I just feel like, we learn to be so empathetic and compassionate towards
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you have going on right now with Scissors Make Sense that that people can get involved with, or grab a hold of, or buy, or whatever? What do you have? What's going on?
Yeah, there's so many things. I've really excited for this year because I've worked hard to like really hone in on everything. If you want to get started and you just don't even know where to begin, I have a book on Amazon. It's Scissors Make Sense. That's a great $14 purchase to just get the 12 steps of like what I teach on. It's pretty generalized. It's hard to give specific business advice, through a book meant for lots of people. And I recently came out with my growth tracker. So you can also get that on Amazon. And that's a KPI tracker. I love it because it puts your entire year in the palm of your hand and really walks you through how to track your growth. So that's really excited. That's one of my newest projects. And let's see what else. I've got my newest round of mastermind starting February 29th. We're teaching that live. I may or may not make this my last live one and go back to having it all recorded. That's still on the fence. So this could be my last one, which is really exciting, that I teach live, but the program will always be available.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So let's revisit that question.
Mhm.
What is it in your area of expertise of life or business that no one agrees with you about?
I think the thing that came to me as soon as we passed over the question is I often say it's personal, it's not business. And I think some people would agree with that. And I tend to approach business in a way where when I was the employee, I always try to put myself in that position and I'm going to my leader, my boss, and I'm asking for whatever my need is. What would I want? And a lot of times I find that what I would want is different than what is like right for business. And I lead that way a lot. And I think, I still hear a lot of times it's business, it's not personal. Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions. And if I was in a big corporation, it may be the case, but I'm not. I'm in a small business. And I believe that it is a very person based industry. And so for me, I believe it's personal, it's not business. And does that mean at times it comes at a sacrifice of my business? It does. But for me to go home and sleep with myself, I have to do what feels right and good.
Yeah. But with that comes boundaries. Like you don't want to just like get like empty your bank account for your team, be like, here you go. Like you want to have some kind of guide, right?
100%. And that's where I think you've got to be very solid on your policies and your boundaries, which I call your non-negotiables. And so I do have those in place, and those are there to protect you in those situations. And so, like you said, I can't just drain the bank account. And that's where I will actually put it back on them. Very rarely do I have to say no to my team because they're already answering it for me, where it's like, Kelly, would love to do this for you personally. However, if I can't do it for everybody, I can't do it for you. And then they get it. They understand that. So that's a lot of times how I look at things. I'm always trying to look at it from the bigger picture. I look at them as individual people and also a collective team. And I always say it's like I'm the conductor of the orchestra. It's my job to make sure everybody plays their own instrument. They play a different part of the song, but we have to come together and play it so that it's one harmonious song. And so at times there is a no. It's not that there isn't ever a no, but there's other things too, where I think, again, those small details can be the things that really hold us back that just don't actually matter.
Those little things become like these huge blown up out of proportion problems.
Yes.
Oh, I know. Okay. So, okay, time. I don't know. I feel like you or like answered a lot of my questions before I could even answer them. So I'm like, okay, that's all good, been checked. Great. So my final question is, what is a question that I did not ask that you wish I would have, and what would you have answered?
Wow, you have really good questions. I would say it would be that question.
Perfect.
Um, let's see, a question that you didn't ask. Um, I would say maybe what is the thing that you are most proud of in everything that you've accomplished?
Oh, that's a good one. What would it be?
Yeah. So I think, I used to always say it was the contest with Nick because that was just like my 15 minutes of fame and something that I just never saw happening. But at this point, over the past, I think year and a half, maybe 2 years, my son joined my team. And he now works at the front desk. He's in college, so he works it as a part-time. And when I think back from the very beginning and my why of trying to provide a life for him that I didn't have growing up, and to see it come full circle to now he's working there and he's a part of the team and he's learning skills. And it's just so beautiful because I always dreamed that one day when I was ready to step away, it's something that maybe he would want to take over. He's my only child. And I don't know that that dream's going to come true, but to have him there working every day and being beside him is it's really beautiful. And it's something that I am proud of as a mom, as a business owner, and proud of him. So
Mhm.
yeah.
It's so beautiful. That's how I started. That is
Wow.
definitely how I started. What is your son going to school for?
Well, we've switched majors 3 times.
Okay,
We
good
started
job.
yeah, we started with general studies. Last semester it was film, and this semester it's music. So he also has those creative genes, and whatever he ends up landing on, it will definitely be something in that creative field. And I could still small hope see him, throwing the towel in and going to hair school. And I've already told him if he does, I'm sending him to Arrojo in New York to get the
Yeah.
best training. So he kind of liked that idea. He's like, "Oh, New York, maybe."
These kids.
But
It's
I'm
so
not sure
funny.
he's passionate about hair. So
Okay. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Kelly, for coming on and sharing some of your moments in life with us. That is awesome. Listener, if you are watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, make sure to go follow Kelly, Scissor Makes Sense, on Instagram. Tap the link in the show notes for more information on how to get her book and her website and her masterminds. So I will talk to you soon. Kelly, thank you again.
thank
And
you.
until next time.